And for Yontif, you find three words, V'raimamtanu mikol halashainos. I'm not 100% sure how to accurately translate those three words. You can look at an English siddur. We are more exalted than any tongue. V'raimamtanu mikol halashainos. The legendary Rosh Hashiva, Reb Shlomo Hyman, tells us an explanation how to understand these three words that is simply beyond. I assure you, you'll hear this is an assurance. You'll hear Reb Shlomo Hyman's interpretation of these words once, and it will become part of your mantra, your very being. What does V'raimamtanu mikol halashainos really mean? How can you also understand these words? There are many moments in our life that we're able to qualify with words. A person goes away on vacation. It's funny for me to say, but to South Florida. They come back and they tell their family, that was awesome. They go to a restaurant. The food was delectable. I just spent a week touring places I haven't been to. What a delicious time. There are plenty of things in life that you can qualify and quantify with words. Awesome, delectable, delicious. But then you have moments in your life that you can't put into words. No one walks their first child down the chuppah and turns to their spouse and says, that was great, you know? No one merits the birth of their first grandchild with perfect health and says, splendid, was it not? The Ribbono Shel Olam gives us moments in our life that you can't put into words. Says the legendary Rosh Hashiva, Reb Shlomo Hyman, that's what those words mean. I thank you, Hashem, for giving me occasions that are V'raimamtanu mikol halashainos. V'raimamtanu. They're higher and more exalted, mikol halashainos. There aren't words, no vocabulary, no dictionary. What do you want me to use, 42 adjectives to make it dramatic? When you walk a child down a chuppah, you have that einikel, or you get a successful result from the doctor, you thank Hashem for those moments that are truly v'raimamtanu mikol halashainos, meaning higher and more exalted, mikol halashainos. Words don't do it justice. There aren't words in the dictionary, vocabulary, they don't exist. You know what you can say about those occasions? You look at your family and say, this moment is truly V'raimamtanu mikol halashainos. I think for the over 1,000 people that just spent the Shabbos together, you can tell yourself that being together for Project Inspire and the Shabbos we experienced was truly V'raimamtanu mikol halashainos. You're going to go back to the communities, as you just heard so eloquently, and you're going to want to tell people in your shul, and you're going to start with the adjectives. And as you get to adjective 40 or 50, you're going to say, what am I doing? You have to be there. You got to experience it, because these are moments that are V'raimamtanu mikol halashainos. There are so many people that created. We started a day and a half ago by speaking about sha'os. Yesh kaina loma b'sha'achas. Find those moments, find those turns. To me personally, to be able to thank, and I realize that there are a number of names, and I sincerely apologize if anyone's name is left out. I am to blame, but I'm going back to Florida, so you can come there and blame me. I thank Reb Chaim Samson for everything that he is. To be able to be on the dais with Reb Yossi Friedman, he doesn't like taking credit. That's the beautiful part. His father-in-law should continue to enjoy beautiful Yiddish and Nachas, gesundheit. Heit. To be able to get a phone call from Rabbi Mordechai Trapp, to be able to speak to Rabbi Yaakov Ginniger. Even if you wanted to thank Rabbi Yaakov Ginniger, he's all over the place. Almost like, where's Waldo? Where's Rabbi Yaakov Ginniger saving, doing so much? You know what it was like for us to be able to say we spent a Shabbos with the Dayan Yonas and Abraham. Do you understand what a schus that was? To be able to hear the life-changing story of Rabbi Wallace, to see the magic last night of Rabbi Yaakov Solomon as he runs a keynote session in such a magical way, to be able to be followed with Rabbi Baruch Chait and Rivi Schwebel, that was a concert Kumsitz beyond. We experienced the moments when we were taken into the life of Rev David Winiarz, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, followed by the song, and it's a moment we'll never forget. There were dozens, and I'm not exaggerating when I say dozens of concurrent sessions with speeches that each one beyond the other. One didn't know where to run and turn first. And because the 1,000 of you were thirsty for the Dvar Hashem, all the names I just mentioned, I just touched upon the last day and a half. Our point is, you're going to go back and tell the Olam, you want to know what it was like? Well, until you're by the 7th annual Project Inspire Convention, which will Be'ezras Hashem be in the Crown Plaza of Yerushalayim, until then, all I could really tell you if you weren't there was, the topic we have for the next 30 or 35 minutes, what's our responsibility, as you just heard so eloquently, like where do we go from here? You know, of the 10 makos, the 10 plagues, Chazal tell us that the 9th one, Choshech, darkness, was the most funereal. It was the worst one of all. You could look at Chazal yourself. Now, how do you understand that Chazal? It was the worst one of them all. In other makos, in other plagues, there was a greater loss of life to people, to animals, more devastation and destruction. How do you understand Chazal saying that Choshech, now it's hard, I can barely see my notes. But I don't have to worry because the light's shining right on my face, so I'll use that to see my notes. If one light happens to be turned on, mamish magic, speaking about Choshech. That's why they did it, because we were talking about Choshech. Now I chap. Baruch Hashem, I'm about to talk about Or, so I'll be a lot happier. Why is Choshech the most devastating? In others, there was greater loss to life and animals. So what is it about Choshech? Open your hearts to begin to what the legendary Maggid Reb Shapio Levitch. I was privileged to know him when I learned in Eretz Yisrael. We lived near Reb Shapio on Sorotzkin. I was able to go to him for Havdalah and to hear him. You know Reb Shapio Levitch says in explaining Chazal why it was the worst? You're right, in the others they lost more life. But in Choshech the Pasuk says, Lo yira'u ish es ochiv, v'lo yikomu ish mitachtav, which means that darkness was so intense and thick, we were stuck in our seats. In other words, we went through it alone. Says Reb Shapio Levitch, being alone is the single most miserable feeling in the world, bar none. In all the other makos, they had people to commiserate with. In all the other plagues, they were able to share their pain with another family member. In Choshech, they were alone. And when a person is alone, says Reb Shapsi in his inimitable style, it is miserable beyond. Other people may suffer, but they can share it with someone. But ask people who are alone, who no one notices, they have no support. That's Choshech. Chazal say it's the worst. We got a little bit of a glimpse last night when we saw the Just One Shabbos video. And you saw a man who repeatedly was passed by. He wasn't noticed or recognized. You could say for him, he was alone. It was Choshech. But what did that man look like when the people stopped for just one Shabbos to invite him? Did you feel the way I did when you saw him then benching his own children years later? You know why? Because that's light. The Gemara in Brachos wants to know, when can you start saying the morning Kriya Shema? So the Gemara has a machloikes. One opinion says when you could differentiate between the color blue and white. The next opinion says when you could differentiate between the color blue and green-purple. That's obviously going to be later because that's harder to distinguish. Then there's an opinion of Acherim. Open your hearts to his opinion. Mishayira es chaveiro berichuk dalet amos v'yakirenu. Let's say that the dayan is approximately 4 amos away from me, about 8 feet, thereabout. Mishayira es chaveiroi, when I see my acquaintance, berichuk dalet amos, I see that it's the dayan, v'yakirenu, and I recognize it's light enough to see. That's the dayan. Now you could say the morning Kriya Shema. Mishayira es chaveiro berichuk dalet amos v'yakirenu. You recognize your friend at a distance from about 8 feet. There's another pshat that's simply stratospheric. It's brought down in Halekach v'Halibov. You know what it also means? It's all about Project Inspire. Mishayira es chaveiroi. When you see a fellow Jew, berichuk dalet amos. He's gone out of the dalet amos. He's no longer involved. He doesn't know about the beauty of Yiddishkeit, of Torah, of Shabbos, of Tznius, of Kashrus. He's berichuk dalet amos v'yakirenu. And you recognize him? You validate him? You take time to acknowledge him? That's the time for the morning Kriya Shema, the final sunrise, which is Oirei Shel Mashiach. So we came here. It's either Choshech or Or. What's my responsibility? Choshech means that people are alone. We pass them by in the supermarket. I will tell you, I mentioned this Friday night in one of the concurrent sessions. I'm actually a little bit embarrassed to say it, not because I'm repeating it within a day, but for the reason that will become obvious. When my wife and I were getting on the JetBlue flight from Fort Lauderdale, so there's a kosher stand, we were buying some muffins for the plane, and there was an elderly woman who was selling it and taking the money. And at one point, she was talking about another one of the items that were very costly, very expensive, and she said, "Oh, it's so expensive you could plotz." So my wife and I realized right away, I think somebody in my shul told me that expression means we were bageled. I never heard that expression until my friend told me that when someone stops you in Walmart and wants to know what time candle lighting is, they're letting you know I'm reaching out to you, so you were bageled. I only recently heard that expression. My wife and I were bageled. Obviously, she could plot. She wanted us to know she was Jewish. I had no way of knowing. I had to get on the plane. It's a little bit hard to say this story. Maybe it's an HTBT. Maybe you had to be there. I turned to her as I took the change and I said, "Oh, you're Jewish. Let me wish you a good Shabbos." She got a little bit emotional and she said, "It's been a really long time. It's been a long time since I kept one." Now, really what I should have done was been Project Inspire-esque in nature. I should have stayed. I should have made Shabbos and had her over. But then I wouldn't have been here. So that was my dilemma. My wife, to make me feel a little bit better, said probably she went home and maybe she lit candles. Maybe there was something she was going to do and she didn't because you wished her a good Shabbos. When people are alone, it's miserable. It's choshech. Let's leave the convention realizing our responsibility is mishayira es chaveiroi. See a fellow Jew in the supermarket, in the airport, on vacation, on your travel, your coworker. Berichuk dalet amos. They don't know the beauty of Yiddishkeit. V'yakirenu. You make them recognize, you validate, you give them their time. That's when we'll see the final sunrise together with Project Inspire. It's called Oirei Shel Mashiach, and that will eradicate all the choshech in the world. That's our responsibility. Letting people know that we're there for them. People want to know that we care. I have a brother-in-law who lives in Flatbush, Reb Yitzchak Mitnick. He should live and be well. For the last many years, amongst being very involved in creating beautiful svarim, he also, for 20, 25 years, helps families with teenagers that are having a difficult time. I don't know if the correct word for those teens, sometimes they'll be called at risk or on the fringe, on the fence, taking the scenic route, whatever the right expression is. About 20 years ago, one of these families, I know the family well, we're not going to mention the name, brought their teenage son, we'll call the boy Chaim, to my brother-in-law. It was the beginning of Tammuz. The date is very important. It was the beginning of Tammuz, and the family said, Reb Yitzchak, work your magic. Chaim's a teenager. He needs v'yakirenu, please. My brother-in-law found out that Chaim's birthday was the next day, Beis Tammuz. He lives down the block from Landau's. Landau's, as I'm sure most of you know, a literal minyan factory, 21 hours a day, hundreds of minyanim, thousands of people. And there you buy an aliyah towards the end of Shabbos for $3 or $5. He figures that I will do that, and that way I'll show Chaim v'yakirenu. He brings him to Shul Beis Tammuz, and when they start to auction the aliyah, my brother-in-law says $5. Somebody from the other side of Landau says 10. A little unusual. My brother-in-law says 20. The other fellow says 30. Now it's starting to become a bidding war. 40, 50, 60. It's starting to sound like it would have been psicha for Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur. These aliyahs go for $5. Somebody came over to my brother-in-law and said, Reb Yitzchak, give it up. It's a Lubavitcher chassid, a Chabad chassid. Tonight's Gimel Tammuz. For the yard site of the Rebbe, he wants to buy an aliyah because he's going to Eretz Yisrael, so he wants, in the memory of the yard site of the Rebbe, he should buy the aliyah. My brother-in-law hears that. If you know my brother-in-law, he's a large, imposing fellow. He takes out his wallet. He sees he has $121. He claps on the bima, $120 shlishi. Chaim is, that's how much you care about me? And I know you're doing it my birthday to bring me back and to buy me the aliyah. He's beyond. Meanwhile, the Lubavitcher, he's a smart man. He went to the next minyan and bought it for $3. Our Gedalim seem to have time and patience and are able to be there for everyone. I was speaking about this topic last year during Pesach, and a doctor from New Jersey came over to me. The doctor tells me, I want to tell you Maisa with their Moshe Feinstein. His mother, he tells me, she needed to take heart medicine for a heart condition. Every year on Erev Pesach, she would call Reb Moshe. And she would ask Reb Moshe if she could take the heart medicine. And Reb Moshe on Erev Pesach would patiently explain to her why she could take it and why it wasn't chametz and why it was okay and wish her well. Imagine, we know Erev Pesach, bar none the busiest day of the year. For a Rav, it's exponential. For Reb Moshe, we couldn't live 1,000 years to imagine what a day like that was like. But he has time every year to patiently v'yakirenu and answer the lady's question. The doctor tells me after 20 years, my mother was getting a bit elderly, and one Erev Pesach, she forgot to call Reb Moshe. 2 hours before Lichtbenchen, the phone rings in the elderly woman's home, and on Erev Pesach, she picks up the phone, and the voice says on the other end, "This is Moshe Feinstein calling. I didn't hear from you today, and I was concerned. I hear from you every Erev Pesach, but I didn't hear from you today. Are you okay? I just want to remind you, you could take the medicine. I wanted to see how you were, to wish you well, and to wish you a good Yom Tov." Our Gedalim get it. Our Gedalim seem to have time to be able to reach out to everyone. Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was once presented with the following shaila. It was the middle of the week, and there's a man who is about to bake a bar mitzvah for the upcoming Shabbos for his yingala. He meets his friend, and the friend says, "I can't wait this Shabbos to hear your son Lane the special haftarah." I don't remember. Like yesterday we had haftarah for Shkolim instead of for the parsha. I don't remember which one it was, but it was a special haftarah. The man turns white. What? I've spent the year teaching my son the regular haftarah. I forgot it's a special one. As it is, he had a hard time. How am I going to go ahead and teach him in 2 days a new haftarah? The man doesn't know what to do. The man goes to Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Explains the Shaila. In 2 days is the bar mitzvah. I taught him the regular haftarah. I was reminded there's a special haftarah. Rosh Hashiva, what should I do? Reb Shlomo Zalman said, I paskin that he should lane the regular haftarah in this situation and tell people that's my psak. Shabbos morning, the father and son enter the shul. And sitting there before davening is already Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. In his 80s, a walk that was approximately an hour. They walk over to Reb Shlomo Zalman, Rosh Hashiva, what are you doing here? And Reb Shlomo Zalman says, I knew you had my psak, but I was also afraid maybe there would be 3 or 4 tumultuous moments where you would say my psak, but the gabayim and a little bit of talking, and those moments would cause you a little bit of inu adin, a little bit of aggravation, maybe a little bit of anxiety. I wanted to remove that, so I decided to be here myself so that it will quell any conversation when they see it's my psak. That's a maisa. And that's what it means to emulate our gedolim. Our responsibility is to realize, to let people know that we care, that we're there for them, to reach out and to find these people. Rabbi said, I want to tell you a pshat that I heard this past summer from one of my Rabbeim, the Jibo Dayan of Montreal. I see some Montrealers here. They could surely tell him. It's a pshat that Hashem has allowed me to say in many cities and different countries. I found out, I realize now what it is about this pshat that grabs people around the jugular and why it's a life-changing pshat. The topic is, what's my responsibility? Here it is. You can go home and take a look at the first Balaturim in Parshas Ve'eschanon. Moshe Rabbeinu wants to go into Eretz Yisrael. He davens 515 tefillos. We know he wasn't answered for different reasons, but he davens 515 tefillos. And then the Balaturim says, this is what Moshe Rabbeinu said and thought. Chizakti es Yisrael. I gave strength to a fellow Jew. Ula yirachem olai. Perhaps Hashem will have rachmanis and allow me to go into Eretz Yisrael. That's the end of the Balaturim. The Jibo Dayan, in his inimitable style, says, let me tell you what the Balaturim means. Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Ribbono Shel Olam, I want to go in and have my tefillos answered. Chizakti es Yisrael, ula yirachem olai. I strengthened a fellow Jew, so in that merit can I go in. Rabbi said, I don't know about, I would assume all of us. If any one of us had answered the following question, and I would call on you spot on. In what merit could Moshe Rabbeinu say, I want to go into Eretz Yisrael? The resume would look something like this. Moshe Rabbeinu could say, or we could say, he was the Mekabel HaTorah. He got the Torah on Har Sinai, Mount Sinai. He was the Noisein HaTorah. He gave the Torah to the Jews. There was no prophet, no Navi in the world like Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to Hashem by the sneh, face to face. Moshe Rabbeinu was closer than anyone. And the list goes on and on. Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't say any of that. He turns to the Ribbono Shel Olam and says, Chizakti es Yisrael. I strengthened a fellow Yid. Ula yirachem olai. Maybe my tefillos will be answered. Because Moshe Rabbeinu understood, says the Jibo Dayan. Of course, we can't even comprehend all of the other things I mentioned. The Mekabel, the Torah, the Noisein HaTorah, receiving it on Mount Sinai, giving over the Torah, speaking to Hashem, having a revelation at the burning bush, being the greatest prophet ever. But at the end of the day, the ticket in capital neon letters, Chizakti es Yisrael. I was there for a fellow Yid. That's it. Ula yirachem olai, says Moshe Rabbeinu. In the merit that I was there for a fellow Jew, ula yirachem olai. The list could go on and on. But at the end of the day, the end-all be-all, chizakti es Yisrael. And so I can't tell Project Inspire what to put on their stationery or to make a logo or their mantra or their subtitles or even, but one thing I know, when I speak about Project Inspire, under that I have this title, Chizakti es Yisrael, being there for everyone. And after mentioning this talk, this vort many times, I asked myself, what is it about it that people so relate to? What is it that people find so life-changing about this vort? And I realized what it was. I gave this over in our shul, Shabbos Shuva. I realized what it is. It's a vort that everyone can accomplish and everyone needs. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Sometimes you'll hear something that applies to 10% of the people, 80% of the people, 94 or 16%. Let me tell you something. Everyone can be mechazek another person. I don't mean most people, I mean everybody in different ways, whether it's financial, psychological, emotional, mental. Everyone has the ability. And the beautiful part is everybody needs chizuk. I was speaking yesterday to Rabbi Yaakov Solomon and others about this concept. Don't let somebody tell you, nah, I don't need any chizuk. Everybody needs chizuk. And everyone can provide it. I think that's why people who have heard this word have been so taken by it. In fact, I don't mean to get off topic tangentially just for 30 seconds. I landed in Eretz Yisrael for my father's yahrzeit on the day of the Har Nof massacre. The Levayos were taking place. Unbeknownst to me, my schedule was actually changed, and I had to end up speaking in many seminaries and yeshivas over the next few days. It was just something we can talk about a different time. And Hashem made me realize, say this vort. And people felt at that time, it's a life-changing vort. Everyone can give chizuk, and everybody needs it. And that's Project Inspire. That's our responsibility. That's what it means to remove choshech and replace it with or. That's finding people, inviting them. We're approaching now. You don't need me to give you ideas or suggestions. We're approaching in a few weeks Purim. Purim is such a Yom Tif of unity. Every one of the mitzvahs shout unity. Mishloach manos, maybe we could find a neighbor, a coworker. Instead of walking by them again, bring them a mishloach manos. Do something to reach out to the people to fulfill v'yakirenu. Do something to fulfill chizakti es Yisrael. Follow the ways of Reb Moshe. Follow the ways of Reb Shlomo Zalman. Everyone can do it and everybody needs it. There was a Yid in Borough Park who after the war, he lost everything and he would walk around the streets very dejected. He needed chizakti es Yisrael. And every day there would be a Yid who, when he was in Borough Park, stopped to be mechazek him. Now, who was this Yid who had so much time for this other dejected, depressed person who lost everything in the war? Who was it? It was Reb Aron Cutler. Reb Aron did not live in Lakewood. The yeshiva was in Lakewood and Reb Aron was there on Shabbos. Weekdays, Reb Aron was in his apartment in Borough Park, and whenever he saw this Yid, he would stop the Yid to be mechazek him. Reb Aron, chizakti es Yisrael. One day, Reb Aron says to the Yid, Be'ezras Hashem, you'll remarry. You'll have a daughter. And Be'ezras Hashem, I'll dance at her chasana. And the man was taken aback. It was the last thing that he had on his mind. It wasn't something that he even had anticipated. But sure enough, like Reb Aron said, he remarried and he had a daughter, and she became the apple of his eye. When this girl is about 10, the Gadol Hador, the prince of the Torah world, Reb Aron, is nifter. And she's thinking, and he's thinking, but he said he would dance at the chasana. About 10 years later, this girl is now a kala, it's her chasana, and in the middle of the first dance, Reb Aron's son, Reb Shneur Cutler, walks in, and Reb Shneur starts dancing with the father of the kala, Lebedik. When the first dance ends, the father says to Reb Shneur, Reb Aron's son, I'm so happy you came. What are you doing here? He wasn't invited per se. They didn't want to bother Reb Shneur. And Reb Shneur said, years ago, before my father was nifter, he called me in. And he told me these words. There's a Yid in Borough Park that has a daughter that I said, Be'ezras Hashem, I would dance at her chasana. But that's not going to happen. Take down his name and follow. When she becomes a kala, go to the chasana and dance in my place. Now you get it? Now do we understand chizakti es Yisrael? Ask anybody what Reb Aron was doing and telling Reb Schneier the thousands of things for the continuity of Klal Yisrael. But first and foremost on that list was Chizakti Yes Yisrael. There's a Yid in Borough Park when you hear the girl becomes a Kala, dance at her chasna in my place. It's Reb Aron, it's Reb Shlomo Zalman, it's Reb Moshe. And it's our responsibility to find people to bring them closer, v'yakirenu. My father, Harav Mordechai Shapiro Zatzal, I know many of you know him, and we certainly were able to speak about that over Shabbos. My father said so beautifully, did you ever wonder why the Hebrew for the word to be alive is Neshama, and the Hebrew for the word to be void, desolate, is Neshama. You can look in the Haftarah for Parshas Para. My father says, what? The same four letters, Nun, Shin, Mem, Hey? One means Neshama and one means Neshama? One is the ultimate of life, and one is the antithesis? Same letters, virtually the same Nikudais. One is Neshama and one is Neshama. I don't get it. If you look, you may appreciate it a bit more. My father said, no, there's a subtle difference between Neshama and Neshama. Under the shin of Neshama, to be void and empty, is a patach. A patach looks like this. It's a line across. Under the shin of Neshama is a kamatz. And a kamatz is when you add a little support. The difference between a kamatz and a patach, the difference between neshama and neshama is add a little support. As people who have no support, as people who are alone, they're miserable, they don't know from Shabbos, they don't know from Yontif, they're never invited. We pass them by, their life is neshama. But if we add a little support, that word now becomes neshama. All it takes is a little support. Find the people. They'll feel the love and sincerity, as the Rosh Hashiva Shlita Rebel Yabrudny said so eloquently last night. And that was a moment of a Reimam Tanu Mikol HaLishaynais. Let them see where the real deal, feel the warmth, the love, exude it, they will sense it. It takes a little support. Let me ask you, Project Inspire, since they began, has probably created thousands, tens of thousands of a neshama. But what about us? Let the 1,000 of us leave and create neshama. Give people a little bit of support. I know there's a Maisa that many people certainly know about a boy a few years ago in Eretz Yisrael. When the boy was about 13, he told his teacher, I need a tutor. And so the school gets him a tutor. And after a little while, the tutor says, you're like really smart. You don't need a tutor. No, I do. And I know many people know the story. No, you do need a tutor. And all of a sudden, a few more sessions go by. You're smart. Like, why do you have a tutor when you clearly don't need one? At this point, the boy says, I don't need a tutor, but let me tell you why I want you to continue. Until now, there was only one boy in my class who was called out. He was singled out. And whenever he was the only one who left, he felt a little bit inferior. It just felt like he was being singled out. So I created an excuse that I need a tutor. This way, when I'm called out together with him, it's more natural. He feels like he's part of a small group. So keep calling me out to be tutored so that he feels like he's not singled out. And the world learned about this boy this past June, because I'm sure you know when the 3 yeshiva Bochrim were kidnapped and murdered, one of the 3 was Gilad Sheyar, and the boy in the story was Gilad. Chizakti es Yisrael, Neshama, v'yakirenu. Who can't do it? We have exactly 4.5 minutes together left. That's to the exact time I was given, and I want to keep to it. It's 4.5 minutes on the watch I borrowed from Yossi Friedman. And I asked him 10 times, You sure you want me to speak that length of time? And he said, yes. And I just wasted about a half a minute. So I'm going to end with one Dvar Torah and one story. Open your hearts to both. Hashmi'ini es koilech ki koilech orev. I'm going to listen to your voice because your voice is very sweet. It's found in Shir Hashirim. Says the Radomsker Rebbe, don't translate the word orev to mean sweet. Translated from the words Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh, which means responsible for one yid to another. Says the Rebbeinu Shalom Hashmi'ini es koilech. You want me to listen to your tefillos? We need our tefillos answered now more than ever with what's going on around the world. The Rebbeinu Shalom says Ki koilech Arev. Then have a voice of Arevus, one yid caring about another. That's the ticket. And then the Radomsker says, so now who taught us that better than Yaakov Avinu? Yaakov had 12 sons about which it says there was sinna and kinna, hatred and jealousy. We have to understand it according to the level of the Shvatim. And what happened at the end of the day? Yachad Shiftei Yisrael. They all became one. So no one taught us getting along better than Yaakov Avinu. Now, how about helping me out here? What's the name of the tefillah that Avram established? Shachris. What's the name of the tefillah that Yitzchak established? Mincha. And what's the name of the tefillah, says the Radomsker, that Yaakov established? And don't answer Ma'ariv. Arvis. Says the Radomsker Rebbe, you have to daven Arvis. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh. Might I add, I can't say it halachically, for halacha speak to the Dayan Shlita, but might I add that the Gemara says perhaps Ma'ariv is not obligatory, it's a reshus. I'd like to add, but Arvis is a choiva. That's obligatory. Who has a right to go to bed at night and say, I didn't daven Arvis? And the Rebbeinu Shalom says to us, Hashmini es koilech. You want me to listen to your voice? Ki koilech orev. Then daven Arvis. Every morning and every night, inspire yourself for Project Inspire and say, did I daven Arvis? Did I connect? Did I give out the books? Did I invite? Did I do it? Every night, make sure you don't go to bed without saying, yes, I davened Arvis. Let's end with a Maisa that I was not actually planning on saying, because a few years ago when I had the privilege to be on the Project Inspire video, I believe it was the one called The Long Road Home. Am I saying the title correctly? The Road Home. I thought it was a long road home, but it was the road home. I said it then, but yet a number of staff members from Project Inspire came over to me over Shabbos and said, you're not going to say it? I said, I already used it a few years ago. Number one, it was 5 years ago. Number two, a lot of people, they said, don't remember. I don't know that I wanted to hear that, but that's what they said. Number three, the ones who do, let them hear it again. And so let's conclude with what you heard on that video about 4 years ago. And with that, I'll wish everyone well. About 5 years ago, I'm sitting in a restaurant, a Milchiga restaurant in North Miami Beach. It doesn't exist anymore. It was, my daughter just finished midterms in Beis Yaakov. So we wanted to give her like an hour or two to just quality time. My wife, myself, my daughter, she finished the midterms. We go for a little bit of lunch. Her attention is drawn approximately where the Dayan is sitting, maybe at this distance. There's a table of four women, four young women, four married women. The next part of the story I'm extremely embarrassed about, but it actually happened. The four women, our attention was drawn to them. They were yelling. They were yelling. And what were they yelling about? I turned to see they're yelling at the waiter. Number one, you call this, we ordered a dish with cheese. There's no cheese on this dish. And then the Avia Voice Hatum, the worst. In the country we come from, which I don't want to say the name of the country, I don't want it to be Lashon Hara in a whole country, they said, where we come from, our drinks are hot and cold, not hot or cold. They were literally lambasting the waiter. I'm embarrassed because I should have gotten up and I should have walked over to the four of them and said, ladies, I'm a Rav in the Kehillah, get out of the restaurant. You don't speak to anybody that way, so get out. But I didn't. I was so frozen by that behavior. He takes it silently, the waiter does. My wife turns to me and my wife says, Ephraim, you always quote the word from Reb Chaim Kanievsky that if a person is humiliated but they respond with silence, they have the power to give a bracha. He was silent and he was raked over the coals. Ask him for a bracha. Now you should always listen to your wife, and especially when it's being videoed. And so I called him over. I said, what's your name? He tells me his name is Shoam. I said, Shoam, as you may remember, I said in the video 3 words, ten li bracha, give me a blessing. He knows I'm a rabbi in the community. He jumps back. He says, what, are you making a joke out of me? I'm a waiter, you're a rav, you want me to give you a blessing? I said, listen, you responded with silence. I'm serious. I told him over, Reb Chaim Kanievsky says, I want a bracha now. He gives us a bracha, and the 3 of us answer a resounding amen, and he leaves. 5 minutes later, Shoam comes back, and you're able to see that he was crying. And I said to him, Shoam, are you okay? And he says, Rav, I want to speak to you. He was 23 at the time. He starts spilling out his life story. When he was 7, he grew up his whole life in Eretz Yisrael. He was religious. At the age of 7, he started to be uninterested, disinterested. And at 7, he left and did this. And at 9, and at 10, 11. And he gives me his whole life story. And then at 16, he moved to Florida. A few years earlier, he married a Jewish woman. He married a Jewish woman from Argentina. But now he's 23. He has been off for 16 years. And he says to my wife and myself, but Rabbi, now I'm ready to be Choser B'Tshuvah. I said, what? He said, yes, because if you believed in me and called me over that I have the power for a bracha, I want to be Choser B'Tshuvah. At that point, I went ahead and I found the name of one of the Jungelite in our Kailo. I went ahead and I set them up to learn. You could watch the video yourself. Better yet, watch it, because then you'll see Shoam say the story. He says it a lot better than me. And then Shoam tells you, he went on, I'm telling you, he became with his wife, Choseres B'Tshuvah, they became fabulous, fabulous people. They started to keep all the halachos. They learned many times a week. They moved to North Miami Beach. I got a phone call a year ago, Rabbi Shapio. It's Shoam, I had a baby boy, a yingala. Tomorrow's the bris, can you come? Shoam turned his life around because I had the privilege to listen to my wife, because Chizakti Es Yisrael. The people are there. Reach out to them. Find them. I got a phone call from a lady to conclude, and she says to me, I want to thank you so much. I said, for what? She said to me, because I saw your video, and a little while ago, our daughter was having a very, very hard time in Shidduchim, and she told me why. At that point, it was Erev Yom Kippur. She heard that another lady was embarrassed in carpool line in front of 100 people. The lady didn't answer back. So she found out. She tells me, I found out the name of the lady that didn't answer back. I just saw your Project Inspire video. I heard the whole Shoam story. I called the lady and I said, I heard that you were embarrassed and that you didn't answer back. My daughter's having a very hard time in Shidduchim. She told me the reason why. She asked me not to publicize it. And then she said, but I saw the video. Rabbi Shapiro said you have the power to give a bracha. You were embarrassed. Give me a bracha. The lady sobbing. Everybody's crying. It's Erev Yom Kippur. She gives her a bracha. She'll do a shidduch quickly and beautifully. The lady tells me, Erev Sukkot, the phone rang. A fabulous shidduch was read from the bracha of the lady that remained silent. Our children started, the shidduch worked out. Our daughter started to go out with the boy that she was read to. And the reason I called you was because last night they got engaged. And I called you indirectly to be thank you for being the shadchan. Maybe the truth is, Project Inspire was the shadchan. Rabbi Sai, the challenge is, we know Shoam Part 1, we know Shoam Part 2, leave here and create Shoam Part 3. Find them, bring them closer. V'yakirenu will see Oiroi Shel Mashiach.